Hi, everyone. Welcome again to another edition of Leadership Live. I'm Simeon Wong from Elevate.Strategy, and it's my delight today to introduce our guests. Unfortunately, we had some camera issues and even timing issues on my end, so I apologize for that. I know many of you will be watching the rebroadcast of this, which is great, and that'll be good. And again, as always, feel free to look them up on LinkedIn and reach out to them, because I only invite the best on my show, and only the kindest and the most achieved leaders, but are also approachable. So I'll introduce my guests in a second, but wanted to provide you a very quick update on Elevate.Strategy. And again, just talking about my partnership with BlueSteps.com, I really would encourage you to take a look at their site. It's BlueSteps, BLUESTEPS.com. They're an enormous global organization that really provides some very high quality executive coaching, and I'm privileged to be able to help them out with that. So there's a lot of really exciting partnerships going on between me and them, and also because of that, I'm able to kind of generate content here in order to kind of talk about Elevates and the work that I do, but also the work that expanded work that if you're an executive or senior leadership, usually it's senior manager and above, take a look at that site, because it's very, very helpful. So in any case, what I'm going to do is introduce our guest today. You're not going to see his face, unfortunately, so this will be more of a podcast, but that's fine, because I'm going to turn this into a podcast. But I'm going to treat this like everything else. I'll timestamp it afterwards, and you can listen to it. And if you're watching right now, let me know where you're from. If this is too early for you because it said 1:30 before, I completely understand, and I apologize. But if you're watching, just drop me a comment about where you're from and any questions you have for Chuck along the way. Okay, so my guest today is Chuck Coolen, and I first met Chuck at a judging competition for a case competition that was national in Canada, and it was a great competition. And he was actually front and center representing McDonald's. So he is a senior marketing manager of Eastern Canada at McDonald's, and he leads strategic development and marketing for Eastern Canada at McDonald's, and he says he's deeply passionate, I believe that, about aligning creative ideas with delivering the ROI, and he's tenacious in his pursuit of building strong teams. And you'll see that in a second, that it seems to be one of his emphasis is to really kind of emphasize that marketing is a team effort, not just an individual contributor. Chuck has always been a marketer at heart. Before his tenure at McDonald's, he worked on agency side of marketing to promote brands such as Alexander Keith's, India Pale Ale, and Panasonic. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce him, bring him to front stage, and you'll see not his face, but you'll see this. So welcome, Chuck.
Thank you, Simeon.
Can you hear me? Can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Awesome, great. Well, Chuck, thank you so much for coming on my show. Accepted my invitation to know each other that well, but hopefully it's because of the purpose of this series that you're joining, right? Which is really to tell people's personal career stories, and which is a gap that I've seen in LinkedIn and other places, which is to hear the human side of some business leaders. So welcome once again. So Chuck, for those of you who don't know you, can you maybe just kind of tell us a little bit about what you do and kind of what's your day-to-day role at McDonald's?
Okay, my pleasure, Simeon. I'm the regional, as you stated, I'm the regional marketing lead for McDonald's restaurants of Canada, and specific to the geographies of Ontario and Atlantic Canada. So in terms of the day-to-day, what that means is that I represent the regional voice when it comes to national marketing planning. I lead also the development and own the regional marketing planning that builds on the foundation of that national plan, with the principal responsibilities of contributing to the delivery of our targets against sales for the region, and also for building strong brand affinity that complements our national initiatives. because we work in a very franchised environment, it's also a crucial part of my role to build and maintain positive, trusting relationships with our owner-operator community. In terms of our marketing decision-making, we actually, the owner-operators have a representative body that has a strong seat at the table when it comes to our marketing decision-making. So ultimately, I look to build the proverbial win-win-win scenarios for McDonald's, for our owner-operator and supplier partners, and also for, most importantly, for our guests.
Gotcha. And do you find that as you sort of look at the Canadian market landscape compared to all around the world in the US, how different is Canada as far as trying to market and reach your target audience, and as far as your products go, your campaigns go?
The QSR or quick service restaurants category is very competitive in Canada. It's a mature market, so it's competitive globally, but most particularly in North America, where the industry started, it's reached maturity. So not only are we competing directly with the other multinational QSR companies like the Burger Kings of the world and the Wendy's, we're also competing very directly with companies like Tim Hortons that grew from a Canadian base. So in terms of how it's different, I'd say the Canadian market is one of the most competitive, and it's the one where we're not the number one player in the marketplace in terms of size. The coffee people that I mentioned just previously outnumber us quite substantially in terms of footprint and number of locations. So it creates different opportunities and challenges as a marketer for McDonald's and a regional marketer within my realm.
Right. So could you describe maybe what's a typical kind of day? I know there never is one, but sort of ideally, what would your responsibilities look like as you get into the office and kind of end off the day?
Well, the typical day is an interesting question, particularly now during COVID. Still working from home, which creates its own interesting perspective on the workday. A typical day for me would be participating in a lot of video meetings because of the nature of my work. I work very participatively with our national marketing partners, the category leads for each of our categories, such as McCafe, burgers, etc. I work very collaboratively with our regional McDonald's leadership team, the regional vice president for Ontario, Quebec, and Atlantic Canada. Work very closely with our myriad of agency partners and also our owner-operator group. So I think you'd appreciate that there's a lot of communication necessary and open lines of communication, alignment for us to move forward with that such a large group of stakeholders. So it's important, and I'm constantly in meetings where we plan and then follow it up with meetings that require the alignment of the stakeholders and then the all-important action in the marketplace. So the typical day-to-day does vary from spending time by myself in planning, connecting the dots of insights to strategy to action, and then a lot of collaborative work with the stakeholders that I just mentioned.
Gotcha. And what's the highlight of your day typically? I come from a corporate background again, as usual, but meetings were never my highlights. But what is your, what do you look forward to the most during the day?
Well, meetings in and of themselves sometimes don't serve any benefit. It's how the connections that you build with people, and the decisions that you're able to make and actions that you take coming out of them that are the most important things. So I've always prided myself in helping people develop in their careers. So I invest a lot of time in my team, working with our agency partners. And at this point in my career, I have some fair experience to lend to others to help them develop in their careers and to make their business decisions. So anything that I can contribute to that and contribute more broadly to the success of McDonald's is really what drives me. I find fulfillment in helping those people succeed and helping my company succeed.
Right. Gotcha. I mean, McDonald's is such an iconic brand that it means so many different things to different people, right? So, if you grew up in the 80s like I did, there's a really kind of recollection around, McDonald's represented the playgrounds, right? That we would go to McDonald's for our birthday parties, and it was like the biggest deal if you could do that. And to today's generation, McDonald's means a completely different thing. So, what are some of the challenges, the biggest challenges as far as reaching your multiple audiences with the same brand? Like, how do you deal with the strategy behind that? And because your consumer base is so large, right? Do you have some thoughts around how you typically kind of think about that?
Yeah, when you have an ubiquitous brand, as you mentioned, like McDonald's, we constantly have to be making micro moves to reinvent ourselves in order to stay relevant over time. If you're a brand that has its roots in the 40s and 50s, like McDonald's, it creates different challenges than a brand that's just starting up today. And then if you have a brand the size of McDonald's, and as you said, connecting with various segments of consumers is crucial, and staying relevant in the marketplace is crucial. So we heavily invest. We have a team of business and consumer insights people, and we heavily invest in staying connected and understanding that intersection point between the brand and our consumers, what we represent in their lives, and how we can stay relevant within it.
Right. Gotcha. And again, if any listeners, watchers now, I know that there's people from Facebook as well. If you have any questions for Chuck around maybe some very specific to marketing, or if you're looking to get into marketing, or if you're an executive in marketing and kind of wanting to pick Chuck's brain, please feel free to drop a comment below. So Chuck, I wanted to shift gears a little bit to kind of the pinnacle of why I wanted to talk to you, which is your career journey, right? And so, can you walk us through how you kind of your journey path to becoming where you are today, and as far back as you like to go? I mean, people are very interested as far as the different ups and downs and different decisions that you had to make. Can you walk us through that? That'd be wonderful to hear.
Yeah, certainly, Simeon. I'll start with the beginnings of my trajectory toward marketing and advertising, and then we can take it from there.
Sure.
However you want to play it from there. So when I was in junior high school and high school, I was a very competitive track and field athlete. And I was intrigued by the psychology of peak performance. If two people were equally as gifted physically, what made the difference between who won and who lost? So my original intention when I left high school was actually to become a sports psychologist.
Okay.
However, after a couple of years of education, moving toward a psychology degree, I realized that I didn't have sufficient passion and focus to continue on that trajectory. So I took a year off. I moved away from my hometown for the first time in my life, out to the West Coast, And I gave a lot of thought to what I wanted to do moving forward. I always had an affinity for business, so I looked for an intersection point between the psychology that I was interested in and my business affinity. So that's when it dawned on me that it would make sense for me to pivot, to go back to school, and to find the closest thing in psychology to in the business realm, which is marketing. So it
Right.
was that pivot that led me to my career. And I think I was also, while I was in school, which at St. Mary's University, go Huskies, in Halifax, I had a few professors that particularly inspired me, and we're good acquaintances to this day. And they had that balance between the uh, practical business experience in the field and the theory of academia. That combination really inspired me, and
Right.
that began the trajectory of my career.
Right. Your fascination with the athlete and what made performance better in one versus another, where did that come from? Like, why, what was so fascinating about that to you?
Well, I was a Canadian class track athlete at the time, certainly not today. And in sprinting, which I ran the 100 meters, 200 meters, and 400 meters. The tenths of a second or even hundredths of a second make a huge difference. And I found when I was preparing for my competition, the mental process of going through in preparation contributed so much to my peak performance and really made a difference on the track that day and whether or not I was going to be competitive or I was going to stand out and win that race.
Hmm.
So I think that lent itself to business, and to applying that kind of a thinking to a business environment was a natural extension.
Right. Gotcha. And when you got into the field of marketing, you said it was closest thing to psychology and business. Um, the one tenth of the second, those very minute details that kind of cause the win and the loss. How did you? Why? What was it about that? Is it winning the market share that kind of translated over to that, or um, how was that linkage? How did that take place?
Well, there was an element of that, Simeon. I think it was even more so the psychology. The interest in psychology led to an interest in understanding the consumer, understanding what motivates them, what are their needs, wants, and desires,
Mm-hmm.
and then
Mm-hmm.
finding the intersection point between that and what a company like McDonald's has to offer. What role do we play in their lives?
Right.
How can we bring meaning to that role that we play, and be positive in their lives
Right.
based on
Right.
the products that we sell and what we represent as a brand?
Right. Gotcha. And when you were in school then for that, were there any particular courses that you took, particular interest in? Are you an analytical person by background, or?
And funny you asked that question because I think one of my biggest strengths is the way my brain is structured.
Mhm.
So I've done Myers-Briggs and other similar tests, and
Yeah.
it's time and time again, I score strongly on the analytical side, and I score also strongly on the creative side.
Okay.
So I think that's a key advantage, that I'm able to find the intersection between different types of data and information in order to come up with some insights that lead to a strategy. And then also, I'm able to translate that into some creative thoughts based on those intersection points of bringing some disparate things together to create something new from the familiar.
Hmm. And that's a almost like a perfect uh, wonderful storm, right? For being successful in something like marketing. Would you say that analytics is something that folks who are in marketing should get really strong in? Is that something, a muscle that they should develop?
Even more so than when I started my career. I mean, I think with data, information technology, AI, that's a basic understanding of data and at a macro level and a micro level, and how it contributes to business decision making,
Right.
and how you can facilitate that and translate that into marketing strategy is crucial.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Yeah. In the realm of today, with insight to management and analytics, it gets really sophisticated, right down to the specific individual, where they're going to be and what you're trying to do as far as the brand persona. And I've had a couple of marketing folks on my show on before, and there's a common theme around the fact that what you're saying is absolutely true, that it's really pinpointing marketers down to where the individual customer is going to be, and what is it that drives them to have a certain desire or sort of a perceived need, right, in order for them to make a purchase, for example, like a QSR product. So marketing, okay, psychology, how people thought, gotcha. Marketing was your degree, and you took the analytics and the creative and put them together. Graduated, and what was your first role coming to university, and where did you get your opportunity from?
Well, I was a small town boy from rural Nova Scotia, so I think the idea of having business connections was somewhat foreign to me at that point, and it's something that I strongly encourage people to do now when I have discussions with them about career trajectory. So but however, I was fortunate to be quite active with a society at St. Mary's University called ISEC, which was an international association of students in economics and commerce. Through that, I was able to translate it into a work exchange program in Finland, and getting a little practical marketing experience being a marketing intern with an international pulp and paper company. However, coming back to Canada, I didn't have those business connections, and I had some pressure to pay bills. So I ended up working in sales. And for someone who's naturally introverted, it was quite an eye-opening experience for me.
Yeah.
So this will give away a little bit of my tenure in life, is that I was selling photocopiers and fax machines.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. So that really helped me evolve in my my interpersonal skills and communication, my ability to present, understanding people's needs. Even though it was difficult for me and I was very anxious about it, the foundation of what that provided to me has helped me in every aspect of my career since then.
Right.
And I did that for 10 months. But however, I knew that I wanted to work in advertising and marketing. So although I wouldn't recommend this to anyone, I quit cold turkey. I didn't have a job lined up. But however, I managed to land one within 2 months, working for a small retail advertising agency in Halifax.
Okay.
And that was the first foothold that I had in advertising and marketing industry.
Right. Do you think it's important for people who are successful marketers to have gone through a sales kind of baptism by fire? Because that's what I've heard.
Crucial, perhaps that's not. It's not crucial, but it's helpful to understand that, especially in a traditional marketing environment where you have marketing and sales teams, to understand those people that convert what you do into delivery of sales and a return on investment for your company.
Mm-hmm.
So understanding that mindset, understanding how they connect with the consumer or with the ultimate purchaser of the product
Mm-hmm.
is important. What it's meant for me as a marketer and advertiser is also the importance of presentation skills, and understanding other people.
Right. Gotcha. And being able, when a marketer gives you a message to deliver as a salesperson, to be able to understand, okay, the front lines really responds this way, right? And being able to then kind of bring it back to marketing as far as, future messaging or how to tweak certain things. I found that to be the case, regardless of, industry that I've worked in before, right? And one of the toughest ones that I remember working in was in pharmaceuticals. And, where there's just such a disjoint between sometimes the way that marketers work with, with drugs, and kind of how salespeople go and engage physicians, right? It was very different. So the need for sales and marketing, that together was very helpful. Okay, that's good to know. So you represent different brands. So, from the biography, you were representing India Pale, you were representing Panasonic. Tell me about, was that also B2C, like business to customer, consumer, or is it business to business, or have you had different sort of experiences that way?
The majority of my experience has been business to consumer.
Okay.
That's where I have depth of experience, and I'd say that's where my expertise shines through in terms of success.
Gotcha. And then in the different brands that you've represented, how would you classify them as being kind of different, right? So the Panasonic brand is very different than Alexander Keith's, is very different than McDonald's. Are they pretty much the same strategy that you would develop, or over time, how did you begin to, pile up some skill sets to be able to know, okay, in this situation, maybe it's this kind of strategy versus another?
That's a good question. I think if you look at my experience from the advertising agency side, you mentioned the Panasonic. I had also retail experience through Atlantic Lottery, and worked on Bell and
Right.
Alexander Keith. So a lot of it was retail strategy. Some of it was converting sales directly at a regional level. So I'd say it's trying to investing in staying current in what others are doing, the strategy in general in the marketplace, in marketing, understanding the technology that's available today, and then generally evolving and staying current in terms of my thinking about McDonald's marketing itself. So
right. Yeah. One of the themes that we often talk about here on the interviews is around mentoring and mentors that have made a big difference in as far as maybe helping you to overcome some obstacles or way of thinking in order to be a better business leader. Are there mentors in your life that you can remember? When did they appear? Kind of how important were they in your life, in your development as a business leader?
Having mentors is crucial to success was crucial to success for me. I've had a number of informal mentors. I mentioned the two professors that I had from university, and how I'm still acquainted with them to this day. If I were to define a personal board of directors, one of them in particular, I would define as pivotal to my success.
Okay.
I've leaned into her for advice with different decisions in my career path, and also different marketing decisions. At one point, about 10 years ago, I also had the opportunity to participate with the American Marketing Association's mentor exchange program. And
Okay.
my mentor at the time was the vice president for one of the major retailers in Canada.
Okay.
And
Great.
that was extremely helpful in terms of guidance from a career development perspective, and also from in terms of developing my marketing strategy and acumen.
Right. Gotcha. And what about yourself looking to be a mentor to others? Sometimes the mentoring relationship is actually more beneficial for the mentor than it is for the mentee, because you learn a lot about yourself. What steps do you kind of take to try to look for or seek out people that might need a mentor and kind of come alongside them?
I've been lucky enough to have the ability to mentor and coach and develop a lot of great employees over my years, most particularly with McDonald's. And I pride myself in helping them develop their skills as a marketer, and then hopefully I can contribute to them continuing to develop themselves as people. You had mentioned early on in our conversation, or in my introduction, how we met. I've been now participant in terms of the board of advisors and as a judge for Canada's Next Top Ad Exec student case competition for over 10 years now, which has evolved into the Canadian Marketing League. So
Wow.
I've had participants from that who I've ended up mentoring and helping them. They've reached out to me at various points in their career, and I'm quite happy to say that I've been able to, in any small way that I can, help them reach decisions on their own by asking questions based on my experience, in order for them to continue based on their career, or to help them with a marketing specific challenge and opportunity. And through Canada's Next Top Ad Exec, I've also had the opportunity to meet people like you and other judges who I've done some guest lecturing for, and through that I've developed some mentoring relationships with some of the students, and help them either get introduced to marketing roles at McDonald's, or help them make some decisions on their career trajectory.
Right. Gotcha. As you were developing as a marketer and now kind of going up the ranks, what were some struggles or weaknesses, or whatever you want to call them, that you were surprised that you had? You never thought that they would be so difficult to overcome, and you've had to really work on them.
I'd say my biggest challenge, or call it a weakness if you'd like, but a challenge is as a marketer and in an operator, particularly with McDonald's, but also as a marketer and someone that needs to do a lot of presentations and communicate my point of view.
Right.
I mentioned earlier that I'm an introvert naturally, and I'd say that's always been my biggest challenge in my career, is as an introvert to ensure that my voice gets heard. Some may be surprised that I am an introvert, but I recognized early on that I had to overcome that on a regular basis in order to be successful. So I was an extremely anxious presenter early in my career, and for quite some time. Of course, most people still have anxiety when they present, as I do. And I learned that to take the time to understand my audience, to understand what their needs are from whatever I'm presenting, how I can help them succeed, ensure that I'm preparing myself very strongly so that I'm as comfortable as possible when I go in front of that audience. And then forcing myself out of my comfort zone and just doing, I would volunteer to do presentations, knowing that I was nervous about it, just because I knew that I needed that skill and I needed that comfort in order to overcome my natural introversion.
Right. So it goes to show that you don't need to be an extrovert to be a marketer, right? Because you have this perception of marketers as being sort of larger than life, full of creativity that just explodes out of them. But you're a living example of someone who naturally is an introvert and works hard towards sort of being extroverted when you need to be, right, to present your ideas. The very interesting thing the common theme that you've also mentioned is, as part of that introversion is having the data, right? The data really informs you, it gives you the confidence to be able to speak. And part of that comes to your own personal strength, going back to the fact that you're analytical plus the creative part, right? Because at the end of the day, when you have the data and it kind of shows, ROI as a solid number, it gives you the confidence and the credibility to go in front of folks. So I appreciate it a lot. Is that something that you continue to work on right now? Do you need to, as you kind of go up the ranks higher and higher, is it becoming more challenging, and kind of, have you joined like Toastmasters or something like that? Do you speak in front of a mirror? I know some people do that.
I think it's a combination of things that have helped me over the years. I did take presentation skills courses. I participated in Toastmasters for a number of years.
Okay, yeah, so I was right.
Yeah, 100%. I received some coaching, some one-on-one coaching and presentations. It is something that I'd say is a continuous opportunity. No one's perfect in presentation.
Right.
I feel much more, because of the combination of experience and preparation, I feel like I'm a much more natural presenter now than I was even 10 years ago, to the point where over the last 10 years, I've been McDonald's spokesperson on a number of occasions with the media. I've done a myriad of media interviews.
Yeah.
I've done a lot of guest lecturing on behalf of McDonald's, representing them at the universities and colleges. So I've been able to turn one of my biggest challenges and weaknesses into something that, from an outward appearance, seems to be one of my strengths for the most part.
Right. Okay. Well, that's a really important point, right, of your career is that you turned an area of development or weakness, whatever you call it, into something that's now maybe even sort of cutting edge for you. I'm curious to know, and maybe you don't you'd never experienced this, but a lot of my coaching clients, have made bad decisions in their careers. And when they look back, it seemed to make sense at that point, but because they kind of landed in a tough spot, right? Or a tougher spot, they maybe got back on their feet again. Have you gone through any of that in your career where you made sort of a difficult decision that was maybe not the right one, and kind of, what was the outcome of that? How did you get out of that? And if you don't have one, that's great. You've got a great career story to tell.
Well, there are always those moments where you strongly support an initiative that isn't as successful as you would have liked, or you make a career decision that you realize wasn't the right thing for you to do. So I've had a few of those on both sides, as a marketer and also within my career trajectory. I'd say, in terms of how you manage through that, I'll use the saying, fail fast, and learn from it, and then move on.
Right.
That would be my best advice. If you realize you've made a poor decision, understand the implications of it, understand what motivated you to make that decision, what the implications are of how you move forward, and then make a decision. Because ultimately you have to start from where you are, wherever you are, whether or not that is continuing a string of successes or following up a failure or a number of failures. You need to live in the moment and learn from it, and determine what is necessary in order to create the likelihood of success for where you are now and for how you move
Right.
forward.
Gotcha. What advice do you give to, um, executives right now, or senior folks who are maybe in the field that you're in marketing, as far as personal development and growth, right? So a lot of times when you're in an area of transition, you're wondering, what am I missing, right? What skill set do I need to develop in order to get that next senior role? Now thinking more towards more seasoned professionals, right? What have you observed as far as your peers or yourself that are like, critical skills or things that you really should be, kind of getting better at in order to succeed, right? Are there anything specific to more senior folks that you would say?
That's also a good question. I'd say that in the world that we live in terms of uh, the macro trends of society and what's happening uh, with all of the attention on diversity, equity, and inclusion,
Right.
it's continuing to evolve the way you think, understanding your unconscious biases,
Okay.
uh, leading by example in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and unlearning a lot of those uh, biases or skills that might have been relevant in the past, but aren't what's going to move your trajectory forward as an
Right.
executive.
Right. Gotcha. And, in that area, I think there is a lot of rethinking that is being done right now, right? As far as not only why that's important for a working environment and, um, just the overall kind of value that people who are diverse bring right to the table for anything, but for business for sure, but also from a perspective of understanding the market, right? So from a marketing perspective, that's also very beneficial as well, is to have those diverse leaders who come from a different background and different, sort of origins, who can kind of better kind of help you craft a message and reach to further audiences, right? Um, and one of the things that comes to my mind is I had a client when I was in consulting who was a very large supermarket chain, and they were just growing out their ethnic, offerings, right? So they really tried to. They hired on strategy folks and marketing folks who are specializing in buying, and selling kind of ethnic spices all around the world. So I think that's sort of what you're alluding to as well. Um, so diversity, equity, inclusion, gotcha. Um, as far as kind of what you feel that you would need as kind of going up the rung as the next steps, uh, what are you working on today to kind of, you see someone who you hopefully admire, right, as a leader, and you say, I want to do more of that because that's what it's going to be needed to succeed for yourself? Is there anything that you're communication maybe is not the main thing right now anymore, but is there any area that you're trying to focus a lot on to develop into that next step up?
The biggest focus for me in the next 6 to 9 months or in the foreseeable future is when you've reached the point in your career where I am, and technology, you see the trends, and trends like technology are playing such a crucial role in how we evolve as
Right.
marketers. It's ensuring that I have at least a minimum amount of knowledge and information to help facilitate decision making in that realm. So, how does digital, how does the uh, how does digital strategy affect our overall marketing strategy for McDonald's?
Mm-hmm.
Now
Mm-hmm.
that a lot of transactions are app based, what role what's the right balance of own channels versus paid? Uh, what is understanding the nuances of the right balance of how we move forward.
Gotcha.
Those are the areas that I'm uh, giving most of my focus in terms of continued professional development.
Yeah, and just staying on top of things, right? Every day is just a rapid change of anything, like as you were just mentioning as well. Okay, that's great. So Chuck, I mean, what's one word of advice besides you talked about sort of working on communication for yourself, but what would you say to people who are aspiring marketers as far as, one particular advice that you would give to them to be successful going forward? Understanding technology aside, for personality development, right? So a character development, what would you say to them and say, you need to really work on this to be successful?
I'd say no matter who you are, but most particularly for those that are starting off their careers, or for those executives who are looking to take the next step, and four things stand out to me. One, the most important is being true to yourself, understanding your principles clearly, understanding your ethics clearly, living with them, staying true to them,
Right.
within the parameters of your corporate life. Differentiating, that's number one. Number two is differentiating yourself.
Okay.
There are a million marketers out there. So how can you take those strengths that are true to you and use them to leverage and differentiate yourself from those people that will be competing with you for that next step?
Right.
And ultimately, the important thing is building the connections. So if you're looking to jump to another company, headhunters will get you so far, but you really find those companies that reflect yourself in terms of values and principles, and make connections there. And then
Right.
lastly is take some risks. Be prepared to push yourself beyond your comfort zone in an area where you're comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think that versatility and the ability to adapt right now is absolutely critical, especially, COVID has kind of maybe reevaluated, people's skill sets and what are important, what are not, and being able to kind of quickly adapt to that is extremely important. So thank you very much for that. So
Yeah, those two overused words are actually very accurate and
yeah,
true right now, which is pivoting and agility. At no point in my career have those skills or assets or abilities been more crucial to success.
yeah, definitely. All right, Chuck, I'm going to leave the serious part of that. I have some rapid fire questions that I like asking my guests, and so I'm going to fire them off at you. Right? You don't know any of these questions, and if anyone tuned in before might know some of them. But the first one is, what is your alter ego profession? If you weren't doing what you were doing, what would you want to be doing?
I would be a writer of fiction,
Okay.
probably historical fiction.
Okay. Are you an avid reader right now?
I am. I do enjoy reading. I don't read as much as I like, except for when I'm on holidays.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Lots of
mine
inspiration.
except for professional reasons and development, of course.
Right. Lots of great inspirations have come from people who have been reading during the holidays. So, that's great. Okay. What is one word that you love?
Happy.
Happy. I like that. What's one word that you hate?
Lethargy.
Okay. People who are lethargic? Is that what you're saying?
Uh, no, it's the, the feeling of the feeling of lethargy.
Right.
A state that needs to be overcome.
Right. Gotcha. Gotcha. And then finally, what is one COVID habit or hobby that you've developed?
Well, something that I returned to that I hadn't done in decades, that's a lot of fun during the winter, was skating.
Okay.
I hadn't been on ice skates in probably 20 years,
Okay.
and friends and I skated at, had to be 10 to 15 different arenas, outdoor skating rinks around Toronto during the
Okay.
winter.
Right.
And we had fun. We had a lot of fun just getting outside during COVID and revisiting how playful life can be during the winter when you get outside and you look for
Right.
the good things.
Right. Right. Yeah, definitely, for sure. And the creativity that comes out of, having to be cooped up in four walls just kind of bursts open, right? All of a sudden, the world's your oyster in a sense of trying to do something that's outside. So that's great. Well, Chuck, thank you so much for your time today. It was really awesome to hear your personal journey story. And it's also really refreshing to hear that someone who is naturally an introvert can also do this job well, right? To be very successful. You're by far the quietest, most thoughtful, in a sense, sort of, introverted marketer that we've had, at least in my interviews. Most people are kind of, very, very obviously external, right? And so it's great to hear that, because there's a lot of folks who will isolate themselves and say, I can't do certain things because I'm not a certain kind of person. So that was great to hear that. Chuck, thank you so much again, once again. And, I wish you the very best success as you continue on your journey and as you're developing your skills to become an even better leader than you are.
Much appreciated. Pleasure was mine, Simeon. Have a great weekend.
And so don't go away. I'm just going to put you backstage and I'll close up here our time. All right. So wonderful conversation as usual. I know there are some of you who have questions for Chuck, specifically because McDonald's is such an iconic brand. And I would love for you to introduce yourself to him, take that proactive step to not be lethargic. To my executive clients and folks who are kind of looking for executive coaching, there was a lot of there, right, that really can be incorporated into your search or kind of where you are today as you're looking for, more fulfilling career, basically. So in any case, I've got a wonderful guest lined up for the next 2 months. And so stay tuned. I will release the announcement for next week's guest very soon. And until then, have a great weekend, and I'll see you soon. Take care.